Before we begin, I want to take a moment to reflect as we get back to normal. 15 years ago today, I launched my sports career with the help of a few teachers in elementary school. The clips you hear at the end of the intros for each segment come from that era of my life. Today, I'm blessed to be a part of a team as we bring back unbiased reporting on sports. I mean, it is the Sport Report after all. Our team has a lot planned over the coming weeks, months, and years, but to get us going, we'll start with the podcast, or restart for that matter. Our friend of the program, Jack Esper, coined the phrase,
broadcasting from somewhere in the United States.
Because in truth, a member of our team will always be somewhere in the United States. We may even go overseas once we have more resources. For now, we'll roll with what we got. We've got full team coverage this week as we've got 3 correspondents and myself out on assignment. I'm in Boulder for Colorado versus UCLA. Connor Treadwell is in Dallas at AT&T Stadium for number 10 Arkansas versus number 23 Texas A&M. Reese Treadwell went to Tampa for the Battle of the Bays, Green Bay versus Tampa Bay. And Braden Magnus joins us from London at the O2 Arena for the Laver Cup. Let's get right to it.
Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field tonight. Holy cow.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey DJ, what's going on? I'm Chandler, and this is Tiger Beat Sports. Welcome to a special edition of this all crazy sports newscast.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler with Sports, and this is the Sport Report.
Chandler with Sports is how he wants to go. With is his middle name, Sports his last name.
At the Sport Report, we pride ourselves on
neutral,
down the middle coverage
with an analytical spin.
We remove the bias so you can think about a team without any outside opinion.
No crazy points for attention.
No power rankings.
No opinions.
Just sports.
We're going to throw out the bias and throw in some facts. We're out to change the game. So without further ado, here we go. Hit it, Blaze.
This is the Sport Report.
Hey everybody, I'm Chandler with Sports, and this is the Sport Report. We got a lot lined up for this episode, so we'll start this week in review with college football. We'll move on to the NFL. We've got tennis, Major League Baseball, golf even. We got a lot of news to cover this week, so it's time for some college football.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable. He ran the missed field goal back. Auburn has won the Iron Bowl.
College football update.
Connor Treadwell joins us on the Sport Report. A double overtime thriller like I was just mentioning. Clemson's secondary did not look that good, brother.
It was a crazy game. Wake Forest cannot run the ball against Clemson. That defensive line was awesome to watch. However, they did find the weakness through the air, and it was pretty impressive to watch Sam Hartman, the COVID year quarterback, 6th year if you please, to watch him absolutely put balls in the bucket there for his receivers. It was crazy. However, Clemson's DJ Oyunglele, starting quarterback, was 371 yards for 5 touchdowns, along with 52 rushing yards. Sam Hartman, with those yards through the air, had 337 yards and a career high of 6 touchdowns. It was awesome to watch.
Holy cow.
So it was something. I know, I was excited. A lot of young players did get in the secondary, though, for Clemson, which is why you saw a lot of missed assignments and mismatches for kind of like that click that didn't make sense for a lot of high schoolers coming in starting as freshmen. So that was a big play for Wake Forest to expose that weakness for Clemson.
And even Dabo said something to that nature of what you just said after the game. So
yep.
We'll see what happens with Clemson. They got NC State this week. We'll cover that a little bit later. Number 17, Baylor against Iowa State, 31-24. The Bears come out winners. Iowa State was a home favorite in this game, but Baylor showed why they are one of the top 2 teams, if not top 3 teams, in the Big 12.
Baylor's quarterback Blake Shapen threw for 238 yards, along with 3 touchdowns through the air. Iowa State's quarterback Hunter Deckers was 284 yards through the air, along with 2 touchdowns.
Transitioning to another Big 12 team, Kansas was at home to Duke, and both teams are 3-0 for the first time in football history. 35-27, Kansas comes out the winner in that one. Kansas is for real. They've beaten West Virginia, they've beaten Houston, they got Iowa State this week, and Duke put up a little bit of a fight, but Kansas looked to be in front for most of the game.
Duke's quarterback Riley Leonard threw for 324 yards with a pass and touchdown through the air, and Kansas' quarterback Jalen Daniels threw for 324 yards along with 4 touchdowns.
Another SEC battle, well actually our first of the day. Number 20 Florida, number 11 Tennessee at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. Tennessee 38, Florida 33. Josh Heupel has Tennessee football back. This was a close game for most of the afternoon. And Anthony Richardson threw for how many yards?
453 yards with 2 touchdowns through the air, along with 62 rushing yards. And Tennessee's quarterback Hendon Hooker threw for 349 yards with 2 touchdowns, along with 112 rushing yards. Pretty impressive day for Hendon.
A dual-threat quarterback, and he might be considered for the Heisman later in the season. Number 22, Texas lost an overtime thriller at Texas Tech, who have been a little bit shaky the last few weeks. Texas Tech 37, Texas 34.
With Quinn Ewers being out due to an injury, Hudson Card, the primary quarterback, came in, threw for 277 yards with 2 touchdowns and unfortunately 1 interception. Running back for Texas, Bijan Robinson, ran for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Donovan Smith threw for 331 and had 2 touchdowns for Texas Tech. Number 15, Oregon 44, unranked Washington State 41 in Pullman. A very back-and-forth game. Oregon scored 29 points in the fourth quarter and shocked a few people in the Pac-12 with their come-from-behind victory.
Quarterback Bo Nix threw for 446 yards with 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Wide receiver Troy Franklin caught for 137 yards with 1 touchdown. Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward threw for 375 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Speaking of Bo Nix, his former Auburn team had a little bit of a struggle at home in an SEC battle against Missouri. Auburn head coach Brian Hartson won't be playing golf next week, as most had previously thought, as he still has a job. He was on the hot seat after last week. These two teams in the second half had 12 punts, a turnover on downs. Missouri missed a 26-yarder, a chip shot field goal. Auburn wins on a field goal they kicked in overtime. Auburn's down to their 4th-string quarterback. It's an absolute disaster down there. However, Missouri saved Hartson's job by fumbling the ball before they got to the end zone in overtime. The ball was recovered by Auburn, and that ended the game quite literally. So Auburn 17, Missouri 14 in overtime. And then CT, where you were at in Dallas, number 10 Arkansas 21, number 23 Texas A&M 23. Arkansas didn't score for nearly 3 quarters between the first and the fourth quarter, and they had a chance to win the game, but a late missed field goal hit the top of the upright and fell just in front of the goalposts. Texas A&M wins by 2 in a very close game between these two teams.
Arkansas's KJ Jefferson was impressive to watch, throwing for 171 yards and passing 2 touchdowns, along with rushing for 105 with an additional touchdown on the ground. A&M's quarterback Max Johnson threw for 151 yards and 1 touchdown, and Devin A. Chain carried that ground game with 159 yards and 1 touchdown.
A Big 12 battle, Kansas State, Oklahoma. Oklahoma was ranked 6th in the country, and we said it last week. We did mention this. Kansas State was going to have it close, and you wouldn't be surprised if they ended up winning it. Well, they go into Norman in Oklahoma, and they get it done. 41-34. The former Nebraska transfer quarterback Adrian Martinez had himself a day.
Absolutely, 234 yards on the air and with 1 touchdown, along with an impressive 148 yards rushing. On top of that, with 4 touchdowns. Deuce Vaughn helped carry the ground game with 116 yards as well. OU's Dylan Gabriel threw for 330 yards with 4 touchdowns, and their running back Eric Gray ran for over 100 yards with 114 yards rushing on the day. Taking a look at the game in Boulder, Colorado, UCLA Bruins come to visit Colorado Buffs. That score was 45-17 UCLA. Chandler, you were up there this weekend. Can you tell us a little bit about what you saw and what you noticed?
Yeah, I had the privilege of sitting in the KOA booth with Mark Johnson, the voice of the Buffs, and Gary Barnett, former Colorado coach. I'll get to that in just a second. The Buffs looked really bad. They lost by 4 touchdowns. They've lost by 25-plus points in each of their 4 games this season. And the question remains, will Carl Durrell, their head coach, get fired? Colorado hasn't been 0-4 since they went 0-6 the year after they fired the guy sitting to my right on Saturday, Gary Barnett. That was back in 2006. The CU mascot, Connor, it was so bad the CU mascot was playing solitaire behind the end zone in the fourth quarter. It was, I don't even think ugly begins to describe how bad it was. And not to mention Colorado football as a whole. Colorado, CSU, and now the Denver Broncos, it's terrible. The state of Colorado cannot play football right now. Like, it is... Oh, it's so bad it's not even funny.
Or the new Cleveland.
Or the new Cleveland. Oh, dear.
With the Cleveland curse.
I don't... Oh, dear. I mean, from a stat sheet, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, the quarterback for UCLA, had 234 yards on the ground, or 234 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. Running back Zach Charbonnet had 109 yards on the ground, 3 scores. Owen McCown, the freshman quarterback, For the Colorado Buffaloes, he's their third quarterback this season in 4 games, threw for 258 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Owen is the son of former NFL quarterback Josh McCown. Our friend of the program, Mark Johnson, pointed out these are the baby Buffaloes because most of this team is freshmen and sophomore, or at least the team that played against UCLA. A lot of them were freshmen and sophomores. So we'll see what Colorado can do. They play Arizona this upcoming week. It's going to be very interesting. So that covers week 4 in college football. Week 5 is going to be very interesting as well.
This upcoming Saturday, we have Clemson and NC State. College game day will be there. Looking forward to that amazing matchup here in Clemson, South Carolina.
Hey, you'll be on site for that, so that'll be an awesome segment we'll have from live from Clemson, South Carolina. Number 15, Washington takes on UCLA at 8:30 p.m. Eastern or 10:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN on Friday, and then Saturday. Oh goodness gracious! Let me just read off these matchups. We're into conference play now. Just listen to this. At noon Eastern on Fox, Michigan at Iowa. Number 4, Michigan at Iowa. On ESPN at noon, number 7, Kentucky at number 14, Ole Miss. On ABC, number 18, Oklahoma at TCU. And then as we scroll a little bit further down, Texas Tech is at Kansas State at noon. Alabama, number 2, Alabama is at number 20, Arkansas at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on CBS. On Fox at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 9, Oklahoma State, number 16, Baylor. That's going to be a battle between that's going to be a rematch of the Big 12 title game from last season, so that'll be very interesting. On ABC at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, number 22, Wake Forest at number 23, Florida State. At 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC, you just mentioned it, number 10, and NC State at number 5, Clemson. Game day will be there. You'll be there. It's going to be fantastic. Arizona State takes on USC in Pac-12 After Dark on ESPN at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. And then on Fox Sports 1, it'll be Stanford at number 13, Oregon at 11 p.m. Eastern. So 5 ranked matchups this week. It's going to be fantastic.
Now we transition from the college to the pros, coming up around the NFL.
Touchdown Auburn! Touchdown Auburn! A miracle in Jordan-Hare!
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. How in the world?
Oh my goodness!
Around the NFL.
For Around the NFL, Reese Treadwell is going to give us a quick rundown of the NFL scores and things to know from Week 3, as he's got to catch a plane to get home before Hurricane Ian bears down on Tampa.
Recapping Week 3 of the NFL scores. On Thursday night, we had the Browns versus Steelers 29-17. Nick Chubb had over 100 yards. Amari Cooper stepped in and had that number 1 wide receiver targets with 101 yards and 1 TD. Great game, great showing from the Browns. Steelers, they're still working through it and still working out the kinks. Next, we move over to Sunday NFL with the Bears and Texans starting off for our game 1. It was 23-20 Bears. The highlight of this game was Khalil Herbert. He was working 157 yards and 2 touchdowns on the run. Run game was looking great. Transitioning over to the Titans and Raiders. Wow, what a shootout game that was. There was a lot of action in that. Matt Collins definitely showed why he is, on their roster, and he made some great plays for them, and it came down to a 2-point conversion that the Tennessee defense stood up and stopped them to secure the win. The Raiders are 0-3. Going on to next game for the Colts versus Chiefs. The Colts pull out a stunner versus the Chiefs. They definitely were able to show their upside now. They're now 1-1-1 for the Colts. We'll see what they can do, and we will see that Matt Ryan, he looked to have some great faith in that game behind his teammates. It was great to see that, and definitely use his offense to kind of work around, and they all kind of are starting to get that team chemistry now after 3 weeks, and it really showed. Wow, a shootout game. Here we go. Dolphins versus the Bills, 21-19 Dolphins. Josh Allen threw the ball 63 times, but still was not enough. Jalen Waddle had 102 yards. Great numbers from all around. All those playmakers making plays. When it really came up most, it was tough to see how that game ended with not being able to spike the ball and clock it to get some extra time on the clock for a hopeful field goal from the Bills. Next, we go to the Vikings versus Lions, 28-24 Vikings as they squeak by the Lions. So there's some upside for the Lions, obviously, but Justin Jefferson did not have the same receiving yards as he has had in the previous weeks. Next, we go to another great game, the Ravens versus Patriots, 37-26. Lamar Jackson doing it again with his feet and his arm again for 2 weeks in a row. He did an amazing job showing off his passing and running ability. The Patriots definitely are working their kinks out. Mac Jones threw 3 INTs. They will look to see if they can grow and figure out a better chemistry. Next, we go to another great game as well. The Panthers finally snapped that 9-game losing streak and beat the Saints 22-14. Jameis Winston had a hard time spreading the ball around. It just looked like his injury was affecting his play, and we hope he can recover fully and be able to bounce back for this next week. Next, the Cardinals versus the Rams. Cardinals lose 20-12. The Rams come out on top, and it was a struggle overall around. Marquise Brown was their highlight guy on the Cardinals. He had 140 yards but wasn't able to snag in a TD, and Kyler Murray had 0 passing touchdowns. Next, it's the Birds, the Falcons versus the Seahawks, 27-23 Falcons. Did a great job. Cordell Patterson definitely helped out his team. Did a fantastic job carrying the ball and also receiving it out of the backfield. Could it be the last time that Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, is it the last time that we'll see them square off against one another? The Packers come out on top 14-12. Great game. They fend off the Buccaneers as they make a late comeback.
And right as he finishes the Tampa game, we just lost reception. I guess he's boarding the plane to get home. We hope he gets home safely. To cover the rest of the NFL, the Cincinnati Bengals 27, New York Jets 12. Joe Burrow said earlier in the week, "Hey Bengals fans, just play it cool. We don't need to panic." Simple as that. Burrow finished with 275 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Joe Flacco, the Jets quarterback, had 285 yards through the air, 2 interceptions. On the ground, Samaje Perine filled in for Joe Mixon, who got injured during the game. He had 9 carries for 47 yards. Tyler Boyd had 4 receptions, 105 yards, and a touchdown for the Bengals receiving corps. Another note on Joe Flacco, he's probably going to be replaced after this weekend. Going into week 4, regular starter Zach Wilson looks to have recovered from his knee injury, so maybe that's some good news for Jets fans. Philadelphia Eagles 24, Washington Commanders 8. Fly, Eagles, fly, and the Commanders are not in command. For the first time since 1975, a game ended 24-8 in the NFL. Now, before the game, head coach of the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, played a video from Kobe's new documentary on Netflix, and the game ends 24-8, Kobe's numbers. So, very, very special moment in the world of sports. Eagles move to 3-0, Commanders fall to 1-2. Jacksonville Jaguars 38, LA, or as our friend of the program, Stephen Tubbs calls them still, San Diego Chargers 10. Justin Herbert played okay. He's dealing with a rib cartilage injury. He's going to be week to week. Meanwhile, I think it's time to start taking the Jaguars seriously. Sunday Night Football, Denver Broncos 11, San Francisco 49ers 10. The Broncos had a comedy of errors. On the bright side, their game management skills got a little bit better for rookie head coach Nathaniel Hackett. On the downside, they scored 11 points, and Russell Wilson still does not have chemistry with his receivers. Hopefully he finds that soon. The Broncos somehow did not turn it over. The Niners turned it over 3 times. Broncos win by 1. Niners quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo stepped out of the back of the end zone, and somewhere Dan Orlovsky is jumping up and down cheering, because he did the same thing as the Lions quarterback back in 2006. Finally, Monday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys 23, New York Giants 16. The Cowboys were once again without their star quarterback Dak Prescott, but Cooper Rush is now leading the charge for the Dallas Cowboys. He is the first quarterback since the 1970 AFL-NFL merger to lead a game-winning drive in his first 3 career starts. He's also the second undrafted Cowboys quarterback to win his first 3 career starts, the other being his quarterback mentor in Dallas and New York, Jason Garrett. Other news and notes, NFC North and the NFC East are the only 2 divisions with 3 teams over 500, meaning they have a winning record. And 18 games have been decided by 3 points or less through 3 weeks, which is an NFL record. We'll also be keeping an eye on Hurricane Ian. As we mentioned just a few moments ago, Reese had to catch the plane to get back. We just got a text he's safely on the plane and they're headed back home. To cover Week 4 in the NFL very quickly, Thursday Night Football, Dolphins are at the Bengals on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Minnesota Vikings at the New Orleans Saints. Then to kick off the 1 p.m. Eastern slate, Cleveland Browns at the Atlanta Falcons. Buffalo Bills travel to Baltimore to take on Lamar and the Ravens. Washington Commanders are at the Dallas Cowboys in an old NFC East rivalry. Seattle Seahawks are at the Detroit Lions. The LA Chargers are at the Houston Texans. Tennessee Titans are at the Indianapolis Colts in an AFC South battle. Chicago Bears visit the Meadowlands and the New York Giants. The Jacksonville Jaguars are at the Philadelphia Eagles. And the New York Jets are at the Pittsburgh Steelers. That closes out the early window. In the afternoon, it's the Arizona Cardinals at the Carolina Panthers. New England Patriots are at the Green Bay Packers, but the Pats might be without their quarterback Mac Jones. Brian Hoyer looks to be starting in place of Jones. Denver Broncos are at the Las Vegas Raiders. Kansas City Chiefs are at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football, but that location is yet to be determined, dependent on the path of Hurricane Ian. And finally, on Monday Night Football, the LA Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. That covers Week 3 and the preview of Week 4 in the NFL. Let's go over to Braden Magnus, who is in London for the Laver Cup, a very special moment for Roger Federer as he winds down his tennis career.
Well, in truth, this was some tough news to swallow, or even process. I mean, I cried as tennis continues to lose legends. First, it was Serena out at the US Open in the third round. Her career is over. Then Roger, just sad to see. This is a man who has entertained us for 24 years, played 1,503 matches, never once retiring due to injury, then had 20 Grand Slam singles titles, 103 ATP singles titles, and the record 310 weeks he spent atop the ATP Tour player rankings. He was one of the best players on tour. He was also one of the classiest gentlemen on the circuit, like the Derek Jeter of tennis with his class, humility, and kindness towards others that will probably never be replicated. He made the game better with his play, changed it for the better with his attitude, and helped keep tennis on the sporting map. We grew up watching him, and he amazed us with every serve, every point, every match. There will never be another Roger Federer. From London, with love, back to With Sports and the Sport Report studio.
Thanks to the curly-haired maestro for joining us on the Sport Report. It's still crazy to think that after 1,503 matches, Federer never retired from a match due to injury in 24 years. Man, I feel old. I'm a year younger than that. Before we close out with Major League Baseball, a couple other news and notes from other sports. In golf, the President's Cup was this previous weekend. The USA defeated the international team 17.5 to 12.5. The international team had a chance to come from behind and they kept it close, but the U.S. pulled away late. In NASCAR, our NASCAR correspondent Andy Jones will join us in a couple weeks as the playoff races continue. But this previous week at Texas Motor Speedway, just outside Dallas, wild race. 16 cautions. Right rear tires were failing as if they were racing at Kansas again. Tyler Reddick, the guy who just dropped out of the playoffs, ends up winning the race. Multiple playoff contenders were out of the race. They're all headed to Talladega next week as the round of 12 continues in the chase for the Cup. And in Canada, the vaccine mandate is being lifted beginning on Friday. We mention it because it has an impact on playoff teams for Major League Baseball and games for the other leagues, and ordinary citizens can now cross the border to go watch the Grey Cup in November. We'll have Sport Report CFL correspondent Isaac Ramey on later in the season as the CFL season, Canadian Football League season, winds down. All right, time for our last segment before we sign off for the week. It's time for Major League Baseball.
Derek Jeter with one of the most unbelievable plays you will ever see by a shortstop. Ortiz into deep right field. Back is Sheffield. We'll see you later tonight.
Now for Major League Baseball.
The Major League Baseball regular season is coming to a close. This is the final week of games before the playoffs begin. Some ongoing storylines. Aaron Judge is going for Roger Maris's American League record of 61 homers set in 1961. It's also the Yankee team record and the record by somebody who did not take steroids. We'll see if he gets to 61 or more homers before the end of the season. He's currently been stuck on 60 for the previous 6 nights. Albert Pujols is now a member of the 700 Homer Club. He is the 4th member to join it, joining Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and steroid user Barry Bonds. He's got 14 homers in the last month, 3rd most in the majors, and it's the most by a player in a given month who is over the age of 40. All right, now to the standings in Major League Baseball. In the American League, the Houston Astros are currently the number 1 seed. They lead the New York Yankees, who just clinched the American League East just last night for their 20th division championship. Cleveland Guardians got a new name, and now they're headed back to the postseason. They have clinched the American League Central, so you have your 3 division winners. Joining them in the postseason will be 3 wildcard teams. Currently, they are the Toronto Blue Jays, the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Seattle Mariners. The Baltimore Orioles are a few games behind the Mariners at the close of Tuesday's play. In the National League East, there are 2 teams battling for the division lead. The defending World Series champion Atlanta Braves and the New York Mets are tied at 97 and 58, but the Braves hold the tiebreaker. In the Central, the St. Louis Cardinals have clinched that division, but the number 1 seed in the National League and potentially in the rest of Major League Baseball will be the NL West champion Los Angeles Dodgers. The 3 wildcard teams, currently it's the Mets. They're tied with the Braves, as we just mentioned. The San Diego Padres are the 2nd wildcard team if the playoffs began today, while the Philadelphia Phillies would be 3rd. The Milwaukee Brewers are a game and a half back of the Phillies. They are the only team that has a chance to catch Philadelphia and or San Diego for the 2nd or 3rd wildcard spot in the National League. That's the Sport Report for this week. We'll leave you with a stat that we found really interesting in our research this week. Doug Peterson, who's the head coach of the Jaguars, got his 2nd win of the season and of his Jaguars career. That is tied for 5th most wins in Jacksonville Jaguars head coaching history, tied with Urban Meyer, who had 2 wins in his lone 3/4 of a season in Jacksonville last year. Yeah, crazy stat, eh? And finally, this week's trivia question that we'll reveal the answer to next week. The last time there were 2 3-0 teams in the NFL was in what year? And here's a hint. One of those teams that's 3-0 this year had a magical season in the year that we're talking about. We'll have the answer next week.
For now, I'm Chandler.
So let it be written, so let it be done. Thanks for tuning into the Sport Report today. We'll be back on our next episode with the latest in sports. Right now, we're still working on a website, but if you want to follow us on social media, we are at SR_CWS on Instagram and Twitter. You can also find our podcast on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, you name it. We're on almost every podcast platform.
This podcast is copyrighted by the Sport Report for viewers to understand sports from a news reporting basis. Any other use of this podcast, Sport Report logos, or anything associated with this podcast without the express written consent of Channel Sports is strictly prohibited.